Hello, this is Joe Burris, Product Development Manager for AireSpring, here to tell you about the new CommPortal web interface. So this is the login page. All you're going to want to do is type in your desk phone number and your password. I like to be remembered on the computer. You may not want to do that if it's a shared computer, but let's go ahead and log in. So the first screen you see is the home screen. This will be your phone status up front. Right now it says I'm available for calls, but I can put myself into Do Not Disturb. So when I do this, all of my incoming calls will be forwarded to voicemail. Let's go ahead and switch that back, and you'll see it changes to green for Available for Calls. Now this is what happens when I receive a call. Incoming calls will ring my account phone. You can see my account phone details here, and there's a couple sub options down here. If there is no answer, I can either forward to a certain number. Right now it says forward to Agent 3 after 30 seconds. If I click the underlined Agent 3, you will see some other options. I can change it to Agent 4, change it to JB here. I can use a temporary number by just typing something into this box, or I can add a number to this saved list by just typing in a number, giving it a name, and clicking Add. So I can also choose to send it to a voicemail after a certain time, or if my phone is busy, what should happen then? Should I forward it to another number, or just send it straight to voicemail? So on this Ring Your Account Phone drop-down, you have some other options as well. The second is Ring Your Phones in Order. So this is going to be a list of your phone numbers and which one you want to ring and for how long. So how this works is, let's say first I want to ring Agent 3. I'll just click this box. You can change the amount of time this number will ring with this slider here, and then you can just go on down the line. I want this to ring for 30 seconds, this to ring for 32 seconds, this to ring for 32 seconds, and I can even have more than one number ringing at the same time. But the whole point is, if this box is gray, then you can adjust the amount of time it'll ring, and that's how you do it. Pretty simple. If you want to add another number to this list, it'll bring up your saved number list. I can add a third number and say, after this rings for 30 seconds, this rings for 32 seconds, I want to ring all three of these for whatever amount of time, 30 seconds as well. So pretty simple. You also have the option to ring your phones together. This is just a list of phones, and just as you would expect, whenever you get a call, all of these phones will ring at the same time. And remember, you still have these sub options down here. The last option is to forward to another phone. So all you're going to do is say what number this call should be forwarded to, and again, that's just going to be your saved list. Select something from the list, add a new one, or use a temporary number. So there's some advanced settings over here as well. The first setting is forward selected. So this says callers from the forwarding list, which is editable, will be forwarded to Agent 3. So all you want to do is just add people to your forwarding list. Right now I have it to Bill Gates, so if ever he calls me, it is going to be forwarded to Agent 3. You also have the option to reject selected numbers. So this is the opposite of the forwarding list, where this is your VIP list. This is basically your never call me list. So if someone is added to this list, they will be rejected entirely. They will not be forwarded to voicemail or anything else. You will just not ever receive any calls from numbers added to this list. You also have the option to block anonymous callers. This just means if a caller is withholding their caller ID information, you want to block that call, and it works just like the reject list. It's not going to go to voicemail. It is just going to be rejected entirely. So when you're done applying your settings, go ahead and click Apply. Now let's take a look at the next tab titled Messages and Calls. You'll see I have the 1 in parentheses, meaning I have a message waiting, and this is that message. It's bold so you can see it hasn't been heard yet. So if I want to play this message, all I have to do is click the play button, and then I'm in this little playback interface. I can play the message. I can see all the metadata associated with the message. I can use the timeline to scroll to a certain part of the message. I can control the volume. I can delete the message if I'd like, or I have this drop down with more options. I can either reply as a voicemail, I can mark it as new, I can forward it to an email, I can forward it as a voicemail to someone's inbox, or I can just save the sound file to my computer. These arrow buttons here will take me to the previous or the next message, and I'm just going to delete this, and you'll see I have no more messages. Now, if you delete a message in error, you can go to your deleted message and either restore it or delete it permanently. The next in line is faxes. I don't have any faxes waiting here, but it works just like the voicemail section, where I'll click on the fax and I'll be able to read the fax right in my browser. You can also see your missed calls, dialed calls, received calls, or rejected calls. You have the option to export any of this data. So I clicked export. I can select what list I want to export, and I export it. And this will be as a CSV file. And that's about it for messages and calls. Let's take a look at contacts. So this is pretty self-explanatory. It's just a regular old contact list. You can add a new contact by putting in their information here and clicking save. And you can search for your contacts. Your contacts can also be added to groups. So I have this group here called CES. Making a group is super easy. All I do is click group, make a group name, select who's going to be in this group, and click save. Now, whenever I want to contact these two people, all I have to do is put it in the test group, and you can see when you met these people, or it's just a good way to organize your contacts. So the next thing on the list is speed dials. Now, speed dials are created by the user. They can either be a 1 or 2-digit code, and it's basically exactly what you would expect. Instead of dialing this phone number, if you just dial 20, then that's a shortcut for this number. To create a new speed dial, all you do is select the speed dial number you want to associate to a DID, type in this phone number, and that is it. Now whenever you dial 41, you will actually be dialing this number, 11111111. It's easy to erase these if you no longer want to use them, and go ahead and hit apply. Next in line is extensions. So every telephone number in your business group is going to have its own extension, and they work just like the speed dials. So if I want to call sales at this number, I'll just dial 101. Sales at this number, I'll dial 102, and on down the list. You can search for a certain extension by just putting in the name or the department or the telephone number, and you'll be able to find the extension associated with that. Next up is short codes. These are just like speed dials, but instead of being set up by the individual user, they're going to be set up by the business group admin, and they'll be available business group wide. So this admin has set up this number to the short code 20. That means anyone in this business group, when they dial 20, they will be actually dialing this number. Next up on the header is make a call. This is if you just want to use click to dial. You enter the number, or you can hit the drop down to see your contact list. And what number do you want to make this call from? I have it set to this, but all I have to do is hit change. You can send it for your desk phone. You can send it from whatever number you put in here. All it does is you type in the number, select the phone you want to call from, and hit dial. Now this number will be called first. Once you answer, it's going to outpulse the number that you said you want to dial, and that's how it works. The next thing in line just says Agent 1. That's the user I'm logged in under, and you have the option to log out. Alright, let's go back home to check out the other settings. So this is your services. The first thing is groups. Now this is only going to apply if you're a member of a group like an MLHG. We'll go into this in more detail in another video, but this is where you'll find these settings. Next up is call settings. So these are just a bunch of settings that each user can set up. So do I want to auto answer my phone for click to dial calls? If you do, check this box. Do I want to withhold my own caller ID? If so, check this box. And on down the line. You have call forwarding options, call blocking options, and your call me buttons. So I'll go into this in a little more detail in the apps section, but call me buttons can be embedded into websites or emails, and it's just a quick way to give someone maybe a digital business card where they can click on that and then call you directly. Next is the message settings. This is just like the other settings, only they have to do with messages instead of calls. You can see I have my general settings, forward messages and faxes as emails. All you do is select your email address and select which messages you would like to be forwarded to that email address. Voicemails, faxes. This just means whenever you receive a voicemail, it'll automatically send the sound file to this inbox, and the same will happen to the fax PDFs. Now you have the option to leave the original in the inbox. If you have this checked, that means it's not going to delete the voicemail from your CommPortal interface once it sends it to your email. But if you leave this unchecked, then anytime you receive a voicemail, it'll forward to the email address and delete it from your CommPortal. You also have some mailbox access options, options for your voicemail greeting, and a few more options for different voicemails when you're in different situations, like these below. So next up is notifications. So this top one is your message waiting indicator. This is the little red blinky light on your phone that lets you know if you have a voicemail. So you can see this is my desk number here, and I want that light to blink every time I get a fax or an urgent voicemail, but I usually select all voicemail. This means if I get a fax or a voicemail, that number is going to blink on my phone. Next up is email. Send an email notification of incoming messages to the following address. That's basically the same thing. Whenever I get an email, I'll get a notification to this inbox. Now, outdial. Outdial is a little different. So I can set up my outdial to call me on a certain number whenever I receive a voicemail or a fax, and that's configurable here. So this means whenever I receive a voicemail, I'll receive a notification to whatever number I put into here, and this is how many times they will retry that call. So it's going to call you up, say you have a voicemail, and you'll have the option to listen to that voicemail. Now the override pretty much does the same thing, but it's up to a schedule. This allows you to have different outdial settings for a certain period of time. So I can say this will expire on this date, only outdial me if I have a fax, and you have these other settings as well. Next up is reminders. You can pretty much just set simple reminders to happen at a certain time. And this last setting is the agent dashboard. This is only going to apply if you have AirePBX Call Center, and we'll go over that in detail in a different video. Now let's take a look at these settings in the bottom. The first column is personal details. You'll see I am agent 1, I am in the sales department, and this is my device. This is my desk phone number. I can also set my emergency location. So you want to click this if you take your phone to a different location than where it was initially set up. So this means if I take my phone home, for instance, and I call 911, I'm going to want to set my emergency location to my home location so the cops don't show up at my office. So this is very important to set up if you're going to be mobile with your phone. You also have your security options, change your password, change your call services PIN, change your voicemail PIN, and you have access to some support documents. If you click Help, it'll take you to an online user manual, and you have access to your downloads. So these are different apps that may or may not be included with the version of AirePBX that you have. So this is an AirePBX Enterprise seat, so it'll include a session, but all of them will include Call Me. So a session is a desktop or a mobile app that allows you to make and receive calls using your AirePBX account. The Call Me buttons are what I mentioned a little earlier, and they're little embeddable icons that you can put into emails or your website, where if a user clicks on them, it'll automatically make a call back to you. And this is some information on the mobile version of a session. It's available for both iOS and Android, but you're not going to be downloading them here. For iOS, you're going to want to go to the App Store. For Android, you're going to want to go to Google Play. You also have the option to send feedback if something goes wrong. So that's about it for this. Thanks a lot.